Espionage Meets Real Talk. We are two former CIA operatives, Brittany Butler and former FBI Special Agent Tracy Walder. Join us as we pull back the curtain on the world of intelligence, crime, and global affairs. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm really excited about today because we're going to dive right into some of the controversy that's been going on in our world. Tracy and I, of course, have worked in the classified environment for like over a decade, I think both of us. And so we have a perspective that I think is pretty unique whenever it comes to this signal chat discussion about talking about classified operations in a unclassified environment. And we wanted to break down, Tracy's really good about, she understands, encryption and what the difference is between, work, like talking on a classified network versus unclassified, what's encrypted, what's not, and really what's appropriate. I mean, we want to be really careful, I think, about how we have these discussions, especially these top level officials with, these unbelievable security clearances. I mean, talking about the highest level on an unclassified system. Tracy and I are very aware and very sensitive, I think, probably about, our enemies gaining access to this information and, being able to preempt any kind of military action on our part. So, Tracy, why don't you start us off and just kind of give us a little bit of the lay of the land about what things were like for us at the CIA and also for you at FBI in terms of having those discussions. What was allowed and what wasn't allowed?
Yeah, so I personally love this topic. I know some people might think it's like so in the weeds, and we're not going to get so in the weeds that it bores people. I think we can share stories. I'm sure you've been a courier at some point when you were at the CIA and having to courier stuff, and I feel like we can discuss that too. And it's actually annoying.
Yeah.
I know people think it's very sexy,
Yeah.
but I find it personally annoying. That's just my opinion.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yes. Like a lock bag.
yes.
Remember the lock
The
bag?
orange
Yeah.
lock bag.
Yeah.
And so I think with just basic things, so like when I was at CIA, again, I was there a bit ago, right? So technology has changed and evolved, and there may be different ways that people discuss, but Signal was approved for NSA, CIA to like use, but not to use for classified chats. It's to use for like, hey, Brittany, do you want to have lunch in the cafeteria today with me? Right? Like we're talking person to person, just administrative chats, right? And it's encrypted. Encrypted is not the same as classified. Encrypted is referring to the application itself, not the information within that application, if that makes any sense. And so, and Signal has been penetrated by French, the Israelis, the Chinese that we know of, right? Like I'm sure that there's other countries we just don't know of that have penetrated it. So Signal is not for use of battle plans, military targeting, operations, asset information, right? All of those things should not be happening on Signal. That would be on our secured CIA networks. Which I get that it's annoying because it's more of like a hardwired network, right? That's how most of them are. But that's sort of the difference. And I think we're confusing, or some people confuse, if it's encrypted, it must be able to hold classified information. And no, classification refers to the information itself, not the actual app. So I'm not sure if that helps at all.
Yeah, no, that totally helps. And I just for those, listening that might not be aware, whenever your first day on the job at CIA, let me just take you through that. And again, like it's been 10 years, right? So my information's a little outdated, but I'm sure it's even more strict about how you move between the classified environment and unclassified environment. So during my time at the CIA, I had two kind of servers underneath my desk, and there was buttons, and I would click back and forth between the different networks. So at the time I was there, it was like CWE, which was the CIA classified network, JWIX, which was kind of like the JSOC, Department of Defense kind
military comms.
Yeah, top secret information. And then there was the unclassified network that I would like check my email, talk to my nanny about my kid, that kind of a thing. So I knew like when I was clicking between the networks, it's very clear you do not have the conversations that you would have on the CIA network, CWE, that you would have on JWIX or, one of the other servers that I had access to. So it, it was just very clear to me when to have those conversations. And then things were so strict at the CIA that you were told, like, do not have classified discussions, even in the hallway, not even like in the cafeteria, because there would be, employees of, the CIA, like, cafeteria workers or whatever that didn't have clearances. And so you knew that whenever you were outside of the vault, you could not have those discussions. So for me, as like a former CIA employee, it's crazy to me to think about our top level, CIA director, the top level, the Secretary of Defense, having these discussions on an unclassified network. Because little old me coming in the CIA, like I knew not to do that. And I feel like a lot of like our service members and other people that have worked in classified environments will really relate to this. Like I would be jerked out of my chair so fast if I was caught having those classified discussions on an unclassified network, right? I mean,
And I mean, I'll even take it one step farther. So when I worked there, you're lucky in that you could
yeah,
switch.
yeah.
We actually were not allowed to, like full stop.
Mm,
And so if I wanted to check my email, I think
mm,
it was okay if I cussed, but it was a pain in the ass. So I
yeah.
had to go and I had to sign up. I had
Oh,
to sign up for open internet access in a completely different area of the agency to fill out
wow.
a time to check my email. And so the reality is why am I going to waste my time doing that? Right? Like
Right,
there,
right.
I wouldn't. So we only had one system, which was the classified system. Now we had two phones, right? And ones that
Mhm.
we called outbuildings on and then secured phones, but
Right.
we were actually not allowed. They just hadn't
Mhm.
I don't know if it's that they weren't comfortable with it yet. I
Yeah,
don't know why, to be
yeah,
totally honest with you, Brittany, but
yeah,
it was
yeah.
actually the same at FBI. So I was
Mhm.
unusual in that I was an agent that had a top secret SCI clearance. Um,
Right, right.
and at that time, most agents actually did it because of the workload.
Mhm.
You don't need that to work gangs, right? Like that's
Right, right. Yeah,
need that.
yeah.
But because I was coming from CIA, I had it. And so they bought that like from the agency. And I worked at the FBI in a skiff, but again,
Mhm.
that was weird. It was
Yeah,
not the same kind of skiff
yeah, yeah.
that I think we would think that the CIA had.
Okay.
You were not allowed to bring your phones in there, obviously, none
Right.
of those kinds of things. But I would argue the FBI has not quite caught up to the CIA. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying they're irresponsible at all. It's just the
Yeah.
nature of the work. They
Right.
haven't really caught up to the CIA in terms of like systems and those kinds of things
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
really like keep that information separate, if that makes any sense.
Right.
CIA just is better at it, but I think it's
Yeah.
again not a slam on the FBI. It's just the
Yeah.
nature
Yeah.
of the work. Yeah.
Yeah. So now that you're saying that, so I remember one of my first jobs, I had to go to at the CIA, I had to go to a different computer and log in to my email. It wasn't until like 2000, like, so I see, I was in Pakistan, Afghanistan division in like 2010, starting 2010. It wasn't until then that I could like switch between the networks. But all this being said, like it was very clear, I think, to both Tracy and I, what to have, what kind of discussions to have, and on what networks. And so, this is not, I'm not trying to be political at all, but it's just like a responsibility thing, a
100%.
responsibility that, you're taught to take really seriously about handling classified information. And the links that our security team goes to make sure that that information remains, um, you know, like protected. It's, there's like a whole infrastructure at the CIA to make sure it's protected. So I don't know if these people did not get briefed properly. Like, what are your theories, Tracy, on like why, how did this happen? Like,
So I said this on the national news, and again, I love that you brought up that it's not political. It's not political. The handling of
Yeah.
classified information is like not political.
Yeah.
I said the same thing actually when Hillary Clinton was using servers improperly. And I said the same thing that I'm saying now. I
Yeah.
believe it wholeheartedly. It doesn't depend on the party to me. This is not a political discussion, but
Right.
I think it's more of an opportunity to actually raise understanding of how
Yeah.
this stuff works. But
Yeah.
I said this on the national news, so I will repeat it here. If you
Yeah.
want to be totally honest, and I think you may understand this, I
Yeah.
think some of it is sheer laziness. If you
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
like I said before, it is a pain in the ass to get a
Yeah.
phone call that you
Like,
have to now go march your tush back into work to get
yeah.
back on it's a
Yeah.
pain. And
It's a,
I
yeah.
feel that that's part of it. If you
Yeah.
want me to be honest with you, and a
Yeah.
misunderstanding of signal, a
Mhm.
misunderstanding that encrypted is not classified.
Right.
That's what I think. But I don't
Yeah.
know. What do you think?
Well, I also want to bring up the point that like these people probably have skiffs in their home.
Yes,
So
that's a good point. That's a
they
good point.
probably could just go down. Like I remember like when we were looking at houses in DC at one point, like there were a couple of houses we looked at, oddly enough, that had skiffs in them because it had
Makes sense.
they high level people that work for the government that needed to check their classified networks.
You're
And
totally right.
yeah, so I'm like the Secretary of Defense, the director of CIA doesn't have a skiff in their house that they could just go down to.
Good.
Like I just, yeah, that was another thing that I just like popped in my head. I didn't understand
That's a great point.
how that happened. But another thing that I feel like is definitely on my mind is how this is going to affect our intelligence sharing with our partners, just in terms of how we handle classified information. What do you think, Tracy? Do you think this is going to, and I know I'm leading the question here, but like, is this going to make our partners a little hesitant about sharing information with us? And I think that, for those who don't, understand our partnerships, especially like in the signals realm, with GCHQ, the Brits, and a couple other services, the Five Eyes, it is incredibly important that that information sharing continues. We all kind of share, especially signals and information. And whenever we have these breaches in our security and handling classified information, I think it really is going to impact our relationship, our intelligence sharing with other intelligence services. Tracy, what's your perspective on that? How do you see that playing out?
100%. And I'll go so far as to be more definite about it.
Yeah.
Attacks have been stopped because information was shared. I would argue most attacks are stopped because information is shared. And the best example we have of that is the Taylor Swift concert this past summer in Austria. It's since come out that the US is the one that passed the information about that. That's not classified anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's also a lack of, and again, I'm not talking down to people. People don't know. That's why we need to get this information out there, how
Mm-hmm.
much we rely on, I would say some countries more so than others, right?
Yeah,
Some
for
countries
sure.
have a more trusting relationship. And so if they think that we're going to take that information and not
Mm-hmm.
handle it properly, I do think they're going to keep more of their information closer to the vest. I don't think they'll stop sharing like
Mm-hmm.
completely.
Right.
Also, we have to think about it from an asset perspective too. Like this is all over the news, right? People who we work with, humans who we work with in other countries, some are very big individuals in those countries, and they
Mm-hmm.
are trusting us to keep their identities secret because the
Mm-hmm.
reality is they are essentially committing treason if you think about it, right? Like they are
Right.
passing us information. And that is something that is punishable by death in most countries, to be totally
Right.
honest. And
Mm-hmm.
if they feel that we don't take their lives seriously enough to keep
Mm-hmm.
their information secret, why in
Mm-hmm.
the world would they spy
Right.
for us? I don't blame them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it also like takes me back to the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I mean, like definitely, again, I'm not being political. This is about Biden and his handling of that situation. Like we have a difficult enough time recruiting sources and getting them to trust us. They're entrusting us with their lives. And then you have something like the pullout of Afghanistan where we basically like left all of these people behind that
Later.
helping, yeah, but have been helping us for decades with helping to combat the Taliban and Al Qaeda and risking their lives. And us just put like abandoning them like that. Like, how does that help us in the future? Like, whenever, I mean, God forbid we, something like 9/11 happens again. And let's say we have to go in and, knock out some top tier terrorist leadership. Like, how are we going to get people to trust us? It's so hard. The work of espionage is so hard. And then you add this added layer of like the handling of these situations and, classified information, withdrawing from countries, not upholding our commitment to relationships. It's going to have an impact on us later on down the road. And I really feel for, the officers at the CIA and elsewhere that are going to have to encounter that kind of skepticism. And I also wanted to kind of touch on, Tracy, like what, and I know this is a little off topic, like what your thoughts are on all of these, cuts to the intelligence community. Like, I feel like this is kind of cyclical, like this kind of happens, right, throughout different administrations. And I think probably leading up to 9/11, there were these huge cuts during the Clinton administration, and then they had to kind of build back up. And now it's happening again. What do you think? How do you?
So I was in the middle of that, to be totally honest with you. I started under Clinton. I'm old. So I started under Clinton, and I like to tell people that had this been like now, I would have been one of those probationary employees who was fired because I had been at the CIA 15 months when 9/11 happened. 15 months. So I was a probationary employee, right? Like technically. And how bad would that have been if they had terminated all of us before 9/11, right? Like, I think about that because the reality is the counterterrorism center at that time, CTC was like not the cool place to be back in the day. It just wasn't. It was like Russia and all of those branches were the cool kids. And so it was all mostly new employees with the exception of these incredible women who, had been there since like 96, right? Since its inception. But Alex Station was like brand new. I don't think people realize that. And so,
Tracy, tell our listeners what Alex Station is.
Well, it was named after his son, to be honest with you, the individual who set it up, and that was the station that was responsible kind of within the CTC, but it was really all of CTC, I would say, before 9/11, for hunting bin Laden, right? And hunting down these threats. It's just been affectionately called that. For that period of time. I think it's since been dissolved. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah.
But yes, and so gosh, when I started, it was only 4 years old. And so yeah, that would have been real bad. I don't know how people would have felt if we had just been a skeleton crew, operating there. That would have been good. And my job would have definitely been on the line and gone had I been fired.
Yeah. Well, and I toward the end of my career, I've talked about on the podcast before, just like the burnout from working in CTC and, just everything that is required to go on those TDYs, temporary duty assignments, like overseas, especially to the war zones. And I would imagine if I had been there for 30 years, I can't imagine how tired I would be and how ready I would be to train someone new and energetic to come in and take my place or help train them to help, like, with my team or whatever I was responsible for. I can't underscore enough, like, how important it is to have new, fresh energy at the CIA. And the fact that they're like, they cut all those probationary officers, the qualified people that came in ready and hungry to do the work that we need to get done at the CIA. It, for me, is like really worrisome because I would be, if I was in charge of making cuts, I would be looking more towards the people that maybe want to, retire early. Like, you've done your job,
bad reviews, like those.
Like, give them a break. Like, it's time to move on, but let those new, young, fresh people with energy come in and do the work, like, because they're ready to go. But
100%.
I know, but I really, there's so much to talk about with this administration. And I'm going to just put it out there. I helped to run the Bush Cheney campaign. Like, I have very deep Republican roots. And so this is not political.
No.
This is just coming from a perspective of like having worked in the intelligence community, having worked in that classified environment. These are the things that I'm most worried about right now. What am I missing, Tracy? Is there anything else that we can talk
I
about?
do. One thing I just want to say about this classification process, I'm
Yeah.
not sure that also folks realize how somewhat primitive it is. Everything is hard copy.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
the time. And so that kind of brings me to being a courier, a dip courier, which is
Oh,
a lot
yeah.
of times what happens is that you can't just, if you have something to share with the Brits in a meeting, I'll just use them as an
Mhm.
example. I
Mhm.
think we know we have a relationship with them. That's not surprising.
Yeah.
You can't just like travel with this picture of a terrorist and all this information. You can't, and there's no way to email that. We don't have an email system between
Yeah.
agencies, like
Right.
especially
Yeah.
foreign ones. And so you have to carry it in this bright orange canvas pouch. I don't know any other way
Yeah.
to say it. It's called a diplomatic pouch or dip
Right.
pouch. And
Right.
you have to be trained and you get a card that says that you're a diplomatic courier. And
Hmm.
the problem is like everyone thinks that's cool, but it's actually the most annoying thing in the world. So it always goes to like the youngest person in the office in the group that's
Hmm.
traveling that has to take it. And so it just was, you have to take it to the bathroom with you. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't, on an airplane, you can't drink or anything like that on the plane when you have it. It has to go the minute you land, it has to go to another classified environment. You can just like chill out with it in your hotel room. You'll get fired.
Right. Right. Right.
It cannot go through an x-ray, right? So then you're pulled into secondary. So it's not like sexy. I know we see in movies a lot about like, oh my God, we're carrying classified. It is like, it's actually not that great.
Yeah.
It's super annoying, but that is how this classified information is transmitted amongst countries that are like our really good friends. So
Right.
I wanted to point out just like how primitive
Yeah.
it really is. And a lot of it's hard copy stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember, so I used the dip pouch between CIA and FBI headquarters. I don't
Yeah,
think you,
you do.
yeah, yeah. Like I used to train people on a system at one point. And I'd bring my briefing notes and stuff like in my dip, um, and it was navy blue at the time. I don't know if the colors changed. I don't
It
know.
must have. Mine was orange. So I don't, who knows?
Maybe they realize like how obvious that is, and if
I mean,
someone wanted to steal something, like why wouldn't you steal the freaking
prison
orange?
jumpsuit orange. It wasn't just
Yeah.
like that. It was orange.
Oh, yeah. No, mine was like navy blue, like very unassuming. And I like had the little key, and I would keep that in my purse or whatever.
Mhm.
But I would carry it with me on the metro, like to go to my meetings down at FEI. Yeah. So it's so weird. It like takes me back.
Yeah.
And I'll share with you just like one story, and then we can like close with final thoughts. But like whenever I've told this story on Instagram, but it's a good story. So whenever I was working in a Middle Eastern country, I won't say which one it was, they asked me to go into Lebanon to pick up a thumb drive from a
Oh, I've
terror.
done that before. You have to go make a trip to another country to get the, yeah.
Yeah, to get the thing. But I didn't have headquarters approval to do this. They just like the chief of counterterrorism at this one embassy was like, I just need you to go pick this up. And this was like a Sunday. And he was like, and I need you to put the your travel on your personal credit card. And it was like it was so weird. It was like
That's
a
weird.
really expensive flight, like through Paris and everything. And Hezbollah obviously like controlled the airport.
Yes, they control the
And
government. Like that's not
yeah,
surprising.
and I did not have diplomatic immunity. Like I wasn't traveling on a dip passport at that time. And I was just like, this just sounds like a really bad idea. Like, I don't know, like to go into a country and just like pick this thing up without a diplomatic passport. Like this just like just sounds bad. The chief of counterterrorism was so pissed at me for not, because I was like, I just don't feel comfortable without headquarters approval and putting this
Yeah.
on. And he was so mad. But then, yeah. But then when I came
Weird and
back,
inappropriate.
totally weird. But like when I got back to headquarters, they're like, thank God you didn't do this. I think that he was trying to like because I was a young, unexperienced officer, just send her. Like, who cares? Like, yeah, it was so
Wow.
crazy. So I had people, I got some people were like, you absolutely did the right thing by not going. And other people were like, you should have gone to do that. And I don't know. Did you ever get asked to do anything like really sketchy like that where you felt like you were taken advantage of because you were like the young officer in the room or,
No, and I think it's just because my situation was a little different. I think had it not been, I would have. I
yeah,
think you have to remember
yeah.
myself and not very many other people were like the only people in the counterterrorism center before September 11th. So people had
Mm,
no choice but to like
to do it.
be nice to us and like not
Oh,
treat us
yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
And like the people they brought over then to be our bosses had all come from Russia branch after and didn't know what they were doing. And
Oh,
so a lot of them were like, okay, you know what you're doing. You've been here longer than I have. You
wow.
and so no, I don't, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm 100% sure that
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I never felt that I had been taken advantage of simply because of the nature of the timing in which I came, what happened, and then I think that's it. It was just a function of the timing.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, guys, thank you so much for
It was
joining
fun.
us today. This is so fun, and we really want your feedback on what you'd like us to talk about next time. We are happy to dive into whatever topics we can. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. Definitely tune in at the Spy Girls channel on YouTube and make sure you subscribe. Thanks so much.
Thanks, y'all.